I just think as a society, like, we don't take mental health seriously. In that culture, I think men are afraid to look incompetent or not be tough enough. And then they're afraid they might potentially lose their job.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another podcast episode of Changing the Culture podcast with your host, me, Autumn Clifford. I'm excited to bring to you today's episode. It is featuring two longtime best friends, both Leo wives, both Texas ladies. You'll be able to see Texas in the house. And with their southern draws, they are funny. They are really informative. I had a blast. They have their own podcast. It's called the Blue Wife Life Podcast. You can check them out on Instagram, or you can search their podcast, Blue Wife Life. And I hope that you get some laughs, maybe feel a little reprieve, and really enjoy this episode. What's up, ladies? I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Can you please introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, well, I'm Mary. I am one of the co-hosts for Blue Wife Life, and we are excited to be on with you, Autumn. A little bit about me. I'm wife to Steven. He is in federal law enforcement and has been for about 12 years. We have 3 kids, 2 boys and a little baby girl. We have known each other since we were 12. Aww. Which we did not date, though, until college. We dated each other's friends before that. So you can imagine the funny stories that can bring. And we both went to Texas Tech, started dating, got married, rest is history, and we live in Fort Worth, Texas now.
And here you are.
You know, Mary,
here we are.
I think I may have known Steven before you because we were on the same team in 6th grade.
Yeah, we all were.
That's right.
Well, yeah, we all, Becky, Steven, and I have known each other since we were all, 11 is when I met Becky. I knew Becky first, but Becky and I have been best friends. So the unique thing about our podcast is we have been best friends since we were 11 and 12. Went to college. Becky and I both went to Texas Tech. We haven't lived in the same city since college, but we've just always stayed really close, and then married. Both our husbands are federal law enforcement, but they didn't know each other. So we just randomly married 2 guys that went to federal law enforcement. And so that our life has gone in a very odd, similar direction.
Yeah. Like, Mary was the first one I called when I got engaged, and like she screamed so loud. It was in the car. My husband proposed at a gas station. That's a story in itself.
That we are totally going to hear about.
Listen, I was so happy when that day came because I didn't think that day was ever going to come. And so, like, she screamed so loud that I had ringing in my ear. The drive.
That's a true best friend.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
So, Becky, introduce yourself.
Okay, that was a pretty massively good intro to follow. So, no pressure.
No.
Okay, so I'm married to Scott. I've been married for 10 years. We also have 3 kids. I have my sons and I share a birthday that was just this last week.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. So I have a now 7-year-old boy, a now 3-year-old boy, and a 5.5-year-old little girl. Aww. And proud Texan, like most Texans are.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've ever met anybody who's not super pumped that they're from Texas.
You know,
we are obnoxious. We'll admit it.
Tattoo, like,
really?
Which I was there with her when she got it.
Yeah. Okay, what was the story that you used to say? I forgot.
Well, so Becky and I hung out with my cousin and his best friend, and they went and got tattoos, like the guys did, our freshman year of college. So Becky was like, I'm going to get one too. And I was like, I'll go with you, but I'm not getting one. And so she got it. Can I tell where you have it?
Yeah, girl.
Okay. She's got a tramp stamp.
I was going to say.
So she's like,
one? 2002, maybe?
Yeah.
It was totally in back then.
So she's like laying on the table, right? Because it's,
Mhm.
lower back. And she has her hands, like, she was squeezing him. And I think she was like, will you hold my hands? And so she's grabbing my hands and they're like doing the tattoo. And she goes, I said, can you feel your hands? And she was like, yeah. Why? And I was like, because I can't like let go. But so now if you ever get it removed, Becky, I'll be there to hold your hands when you.
Why would I get that removed? Why would I do
She's
that?
like, I can't see it. Whatever. I'm over it.
Yeah, my husband.
Because she's so proud of Texas. Yeah.
But I am getting it removed. That is my plan.
Really?
Yeah, I go through different phases though, where I'm like, well, maybe I'll get this one. I'm just not a person that should get a tattoo. I change my mind all the time.
Typical woman, right? Like all of us can't make a decision. I change my mood. I change what I want to do by the day. Really honest. That's really what I do.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So real quickly, tell us a little bit about your podcast, because I'm sure my peeps need to go over and hear it. So tell us about it.
So we started this. We kind of have two different reasons, but basically we got really tired of hearing all the nonsense that people were saying about law enforcement officers. And so we thought, this would be such a great outlet for wives of officers who don't really know how to handle that life so much. And so we decided we're an interview show. It's not just us talking the whole time. We interview people that are experts in the field. So maybe you're a counselor, maybe you're a first responder yourself, have an amazing story, or we just want it to be uplifting and encouraging, but also honest and real.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So what's the name of it?
Blue Wife Life podcast. And like Becky said, we're an interview show, and I would say we're about 50-50. Some of the topics directly relate to law enforcement life, and some honestly have nothing to do with it. It's just what we think is really interesting and can encourage wives or make wives feel less alone.
Mm.
So we, like we were talking in the pre-show, Autumn, we were just chatting about how we decided, like, do we think this is interesting? Would we talk about this at happy hour or on the phone? We're trying to create that for other wives out there that might feel alone.
I love that. I love that so much. And that's really why I wanted to have you guys on, is because I love that. And I love that you're a duo. I love that you guys have been best friends forever. I had no idea. I think that is so cool. I think your show is really cool. So Sheepdogs, head over there, go see them. Their link will be in the show notes, so you can just scroll down. But you can go find them on Instagram, and they're really cool. I love their page. You guys are always having it popping, and it's so pretty. I love your page and how pretty it is, and your logo.
Oh, gosh, thank you. We're like, that you need to come talk to us every day. You're like our little cheerleader.
Yeah, well, that's why I have to have the podcast. I have to be honest with you. I'm trying to be everyone's cheerleader nowadays. I want to ask you ladies something. So the big thing with my podcast, what my big movement really is, and I know you know this, but I'm going to go over this for anybody who might be brand new to me, is, I just, what the hell is it even called? I just rebranded. I was going to say I just reinvented myself. Well, I essentially did that too. But I rebranded and I called my podcast now Changing the Culture. And I'll tell you why, is because I really believe that the culture needs to change. And we pre-show, we discussed it between the both of you. Have like 22, 24 years of being police wives together, between the both of you. And so, I mean, you've seen a lot of things. You may not be on the road, but I think we all know our husbands come home and they just let loose on us. And so we know a lot about what's going on. And I think that, like, I just want to make a note, like, never underestimate the power or the knowledge of a police wife. Because let me tell you, my husband's his section calls me the lieutenant, because I freaking know. I know what's going on. So, like, we'll be all like get-togethers, and I'm like, well, I think you need to do this, this, and this, and they're like, okay, LT. I'm like, yeah, no problem. But I want to talk to you a little bit about your perspective on police culture and how we can change it for the better, and what the wives specifically can do. So that's really what we're going to be talking about, sheepdogs, in today's episode. And so, ladies, what have you seen for the culture? Like, what have you seen that you believe needs to shift?
So for me, my husband, I've never known him outside of law enforcement, so I couldn't tell you if he's changed or not, but I hear that a lot from other wives that their husband has changed and they're not exactly sure how to communicate. And
Yeah.
I think that's because of the stresses and what they see day in and day out. Um, and how does anybody know how to cope with that? Much less that share that with your family when maybe you don't want to bring it home because you need an escape, right? And you just don't want to rehash it. Or because maybe you think, like, I don't want my wife to know. I want to protect her, from this negative world.
Yeah.
Did that didn't answer the question. Mary, you take it away.
No, but I like that. No. I really like what you had to say about that. And I think here's what I think is I think that that's a discussion that needs to happen is as an officer, do we protect our spouses? Do they try to protect spouses or, and I can say speaking from an officer, I never ever try to protect my spouse because he's a cop, but I can say that I have always tried to protect my family, specifically like my mom and my dad. I never wanted them to know anything. Um, and like I can say like even today, like we'll go like there'll be like a really bad crash or there'll be something and I'll just act completely like I just see them acting like normal people. Oh my gosh, like what's going on? And I'm like, just keep going, keep going, keep going. Like don't even look at it, like just keep driving, right? And they're like, why are you being so weird? I'm like, because you have no idea what it's like to be on the side of the road and facing that and dealing with that. It's not something you want to gawk at, trust me. Because like they haven't dealt with something like that up close and personal. And so the question becomes like, in your opinion, what you were just saying, Becky, do you think like spouses do like try to protect their spouses, like their officers?
I think my husband definitely does. So I used to be a counselor. So like I of all people am like, talk to me. Let's talk. That's what we do. I listen, you talk. That's not my husband's MO. That's just not who he is in general. And so I can't change him into that. Ask him about this and before, and he has said that what he feels is important for Leos to have, he said they need good friends. They need somebody. Now he was like, listen, we're not going to have a 40-minute conversation like a woman might, but a 4-minute one might do the trick. If you say like, hey man, heard about what happened. And they say, yeah, it was pretty intense. And you say, okay, well, let me know if you need anything. And then be there for them if they do, know?
Yep. I love that.
Back to your original question, it kind of cut out on me, but I think you were asking, have you seen your spouse change in law enforcement? Is that what you're? Yeah. So I have seen my husband change. I married him. He was in a business job. I've also, like I said earlier, have known him for so long since he was a kid. So it's kind of hard for me in one hand because about the time that he went into law enforcement, he was turning 25. So he was kind of shifting into adulthood anyway, and we had just gotten married. So I don't know. The line is kind of blurred between what is his job.
I understand. Between like what is his job and everything else.
The line was blurred between adulthood and getting his job in law enforcement. So he just got a lot more jaded, a lot more, I want to say judgmental, but not in like the way most people would probably think. Law enforcement guys probably get that, but he just changed. He wasn't It's really hard to put this into words, but he used to be more bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like
Yeah. He used to be
super,
like a glass half full. Now it's half
yes,
empty, right?
yes.
Totally.
And my mom has even noticed it.
Hmm. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think that um do you think that the job change like the job change your husband too, Becky?
Like I said, my husband was in the military and then he went into law enforcement. So I have not seen the change. However, my husband, basically all of his best friends are also in law enforcement. So I think he has a very similar camaraderie.
Yeah, yeah.
I do have to ask him though, hey, if you felt like you needed to talk, would you be open to talking to them?
Mhm.
Feel like you could, or is it too much of like an listen, I love me an alpha male, but is it too, so I'm not knocking this, but like, is it too much? Is it admitting too much weakness if you were to say, like, listen, I'm not sleeping, I'm not functioning well right now, I'm snapping at my wife?
Mm,
And he did say he does have friends that he feels like he could do that if he needs to.
really?
I
Now,
just
does
don't
he?
know, does he know that line? I'm not sure that he knows the line of when he does need to.
Yeah. And so, like, what do you think, like, from being like a wife, right? Like, what? And the reason why I'm asking you these is really specifically is I want husbands to hear this. I want to know if you think that it's important for wives to know this and to be able to pick out the changes in their officers. Do you think that's important? I mean, you were a counselor at one point too, right, Becky? So I mean, like, is that something that like wives need to be aware of? You know?
I think every wife would say, of course, yes.
Yeah.
I think that they just have to be able to distinguish the difference between giving your husband a little bit of space and a little bit of grace with maybe he's getting short with you, and knowing where that line is between what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, healthy coping skills, like, and what am I saying? Like being able to know when they need to express what they're going through and when they
Yeah.
just space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you were talking about your husband changing, Mary, and I appreciated everything that you said. One thing that I want to ask, and I want to talk about is like from being a police spouse, do you see that the culture, what do you see? What do you ladies see? I mean, like we kind of been talking about like, yeah, we see changes in our officers, we see them shut down, they'll be bitchy to us, they'll snap at us, this and that, right? But like what do you think we could like what do you think needs to change in the culture? Like from being the spouse, like what do you hear a lot of from either your husband or like his friends or like when we all know that when we have get-togethers with other Leos, everyone's talking shop. So like we're not even gonna freaking pretend like that's not happening. Like so what do you hear like constantly? Like what is like an underlying problem of like what's going on in our culture right now?
Well, I was actually talking to Stephen about this about an hour before our interview. He has dealt with some anxiety and some worries, some that I know he doesn't let me in on, and some that he does. And I think like the ultimate thing for him is that in law enforcement in general, like these men and women feel like they have to be so tough, right? Like
Mhm.
I feel like we've made a lot of breakthroughs with counseling just in general. Like people don't look down on it like maybe they did 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But maybe in the law enforcement world, you could tell us way more, Autumn. I feel like maybe it still might be looked down upon for those men or women to ask for help. Or
Mhm.
are they worried they're going to lose their job or,
Mhm.
get put at a desk or, they carry a gun. So are people going to think, they're not stable if they're dealing with, mental issues and or just anxiety in general. And I just think as a society, we're still not giving credit to mental health, that is a really big deal. And like your ultimate goal for your podcast is to bring awareness to these people that are committing suicide, right? Like they're holding it all in and no one's ever like reaching out and saying, I need help. And or we hear if someone is on medicine, we think guys are gonna think like, oh, he's, not a real man or he can't handle this.
Mm-hmm.
Women, I don't think that about women. I personally am on anxiety medication.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly I don't judge anyone for that. But I feel like being a woman, it's like a little more acceptable for me to be on meds, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think as a society, like we don't take mental health seriously. Like we don't, and in that culture, I think men are afraid to look incompetent or not be tough enough, and then they're afraid they might potentially lose their job, right?
Yeah, 100%. Now you hit on a lot of things, really, really key things. I think, a lot of my clients, a lot of people who I talk to, a lot of first responders, are all afraid of losing our job. Like it doesn't matter, even if you're like, you don't even have to be fucking suicidal. It's not even that. It's like, yeah, I'm just having a tough time. Oh, really? Okay, we need to take your gun. Like what? Like that. I think, but here's what I think. I think the culture has to start to change from the top down. You're talking a lot about, counseling has a bad rep, right? Well, it wouldn't have such a bad rep if the chief was like, I go to counseling, I love it. I want all my officers to go if you want to. Totally open door, you go. Right? Like, can you like, and I don't know any personally, but I guarantee there has got to be one like progressive chief out there that's doing something like that. And think about what that would do, that atmosphere, what that would do for like the officers. You know what I mean? They'd feel so less, I don't know, pressured and stuff like that. I mean, now,
It would be 100% normalized.
yeah, exactly. And I don't understand, I can't figure out how like even officers have for so long, and like society as a whole hasn't figured out that when you deal with that kind of trauma day in and day out for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, like how does anybody not expect that shit to fuck you up? Like I don't understand. I can't figure that out for the life of me. And I don't know. Have you seen your husband, like either one of you, or both of you? Did they have like any like cool, like I would say like coping mechanisms that like any officers listening might be able to take away? Like, do they have like routines? Do you see them do? Is like when dad comes home, does he do this thing? Does he play the guitar? Like, what is like what do your husbands do?
Becky's husband has a really interesting little hobby.
Oh,
Nick,
yeah.
he's a bit mad at me for saying that.
No, but I know he for sure it's not really interesting. He just needs 10-15 minutes when he walks in the door to like chill, press. Like I used to joke because I'd be like, "Well, what was your drive home? How was that drive with like your windows rolled down and jamming?" And meanwhile, I got 3 kids I'm hauling around all the time. What was that? We
Mm-hmm.
get to decompress, but it's totally different. Like he needs to be able to go from talking to what he would say would be like the scum of the earth
Mm-hmm.
most of his day and transition to this like happy where we're like daddy's home, yay. I mean that's like a really big jump, so he just needs like 15 minutes where I'm not on him, like even if it's just love you, like he just needs his time.
Mm-hmm.
Steven is the same. Yeah, and I don't even so much that it's right when he walks in. I think he just needs time every day to like zone out and not have to, what Becky was saying, just to kind of chill. And he needs like, ideally, we don't do it every week because we have 3 really small children, but he needs like something on his own. He loves to play golf. He likes to go fishing, watch sports. He needs to do something like for him, that like fills him up, you know. We're working on that right now with a baby still. It's kind of difficult, but yeah.
That's marriage advice in general, though.
Yeah.
Your spouse, each of you needs to have your own thing in your own time. Not everything has to be combined. You each have to have something that fills you up.
You know, it's really interesting. I love that we're having this conversation because I just got out of a client session and talking about this exact same thing, right? Because how many people feel selfish? Like how many of us were like, oh my God, I'm so selfish, right? Or like we're the spouse, right? And we're like, this fucking asshole, he's been gone. And who does he think he is? Like, I need here, take the kids or whatever, right? Like I haven't experienced that, but I have like a lot of wives who may be like, oh no, I feel so selfish for being like that. Yet I need that, yet I don't know what to do. And so like what would be your piece of advice to like a wife who like what's your advice to like helping the spouse to like decompress, or like what did you guys develop? Did you just have conversation, or did you not have conversation and you just know it? Like how is that?
I've had to have a lot of conversations with my husband, like, this is what I want, this is what I need, vice versa. I feel like Becky and Scott much better at, like, they've always done that. Like the culture of their marriage is like they go do their own things a lot, and they're really good at that. Like girls trips, guys trips. Steven and I love to do a ton together. So we have to like be very intentional about, you go do your thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for Becky and I, it looks different. It's different for both of our marriages. Like it comes more natural to them, like from an outsider looking in.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's like we have to like talk about it. And if he's gonna go play golf on a random afternoon, I like have to kind of be mentally prepared, which sounds stupid,
Mm-mm.
but you know, I need to know, like, I don't know, his schedule changes a lot anyway. But if I think, oh, you're actually going to be home, and then I don't know, I'm just rambling now, but
No, because I agree with that.
Like, I don't feel selfish. I'm like, I need to out of this house. Like, especially right now. Help me, I need out of this house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I agree. See, it's cool. This is why I like having a conversation with two other police wives, right? Is because I'm a lot like you, Mary, is my husband and I, we've always done everything together, right? And so like when he needs like some time to go and like do his thing, right? And I have to be mentally prepared for that. Otherwise I'm like, oh, well, we aren't spending the day together. Like, what the fuck do you mean we're not spending the day together? Fucking course we're spending the day together. Like, you're an asshole, right? But and believe me, we've had many of those like discussions. But when I take a step back and I think about it, it's like, oh no, he wasn't like trying to be a dink. He was working through some shit in his head, and he just didn't want to like bring me into that. And he just wanted to go, like you said, go fishing or go do his thing for the day, or even just a couple hours. But I think sometimes as a spouse, we take that shit really personally. That Becky, it kind of sounds like you don't, which is amazing. It took me a long time not to take it personally, but even because we both worked the job together, right? And so I'm like, I would take that shit personally because as a woman, one thing that I'm really really good at is just I've always been really good at like just setting the suitcase down from work. Like I just set it down and like forget about it. I don't decompression time is like I'm just gonna go clean, you know what I mean? Or I'm gonna make a meal, or I'm gonna bake some cupcakes just so that I can just focus on that thing. But I didn't need to be away from him. I didn't need to be away from people, right? But I think some of us just cope different. And I think as a spouse, sometimes it can be really hard not to take that personally.
mm-hmm.
You know. So let me ask you this. Have you have you guys ever like do you guys have any like police wife friends or anything like that have like really got kind of caught up in like you've seen like their husbands get caught up in the negativity and then it like bleeds out to the wives and they're like friggin' PD blah blah blah, and then what does that do for the spouse? He's negative, she's just pouring more gasoline onto that fire, he can't get any reprieve. Do you ever see any of that?
So, I won't say the agency, but uh, where we lived before, there were tons of federal agencies, and we all hung out together because everybody that lived there pretty much was transferred in there. And so you kind of clung to each other. And but there was one agency that you saw a lot of fighting within it.
Really?
And yeah, that went over. Now everybody hung out with each other. Everybody's like barbecuing all the time. It's a little town. There's nothing to do. But we were all friends. So, but yeah, I know that the pressure and the stress does bleed over into other things. But I don't think from the wife's perspective that necessarily changed friendships.
That's good. I like that. But what about, now let me ask you this though. But what do you think about the wives being negative? Like pouring, like just, right? Because like we're negative if we hear that they're coming home and like they're all pissed off, right? Like I've been around a lot of spouses who don't even know what they're talking about, or all they know what they're talking about is what their husband says, which is fine, right? Because that's all we know. I mean, unless you're on the job. But my question is like, just to go back to that is like, but do you think that how do you think for a spouse listening, how do you think that, like, how do you balance that, right? Like, how do you not be the gasoline that's being poured on the fire? How do you not feed into that? Because I have to say that I think this is a huge problem. I was saying this today on my free resiliency training I was giving, is that you've got to be a damn good spouse. If your officer is going to survive and be a damn good officer, you have got to learn how to be a damn good spouse, because you can really, really agitate and really be the fuel to this fire if you don't know how to put it out. And so, like, what would you give for advice, or what would you say, or what's your opinion on that?
That makes me think of Adam Davis. Do you know Adam
Yes.
Davis? Yeah.
Yes.
We just interviewed him a few weeks ago, and we asked him that question, like, what advice would you have? Like, what do officers need from their spouses? And he said just to love them well, I think were his words. And it your question made me think of that, because he said the wives have a lot of power, and he goes, but wives don't realize how powerful they are, because you can change, the direction. He gave this example of him walking in really frustrated, had a bad day, and his wife was like, hey, get your head up, like, get out of that. I don't really know exactly what she said, but essentially, like, you're fine, it's going to be okay. And she knows her husband the best, so she knows what works for him. But it just makes me think, advice. I don't know that I have great advice for wives, but we do have a lot of power, and not in a like cocky, conceited way, but like, my husband and I are a team, and I want him to succeed. I want him to do well in every area of life. So, I'm going to try to bring him up when he's down about whatever it is he's down about, and now if your marriage is in a place where maybe it's not the best it's been, or you're having some trouble, I think that's when you would want to go to counseling. Now I'm going off on a totally different tangent,
No,
but
I like it. It's good.
it's easy to say that. It just made me think this, like, if you're in a healthy, good marriage, love them well, be their cheerleader, you have the power. But what about the marriages that kind of frankly suck right now for whatever reason?
Yeah.
I don't know, if it's infidelity or just communication or kids or life or whatever. But that's when it'd be like, go to counseling, like, fight for your marriage, because you can get to that place where your wife can love you well, or your husband can love the wife well. I don't know. I'm rambling now. I don't even know what made me start saying that, but yeah.
I love it though, and I think it's true.
I have a lot of not.
Go ahead. You have a lot of what?
So I was going to say, I have a lot of friends not in law enforcement, but that are struggling in different areas in their marriage right now. And it just makes me feel for them, because it's not easy for them to talk to their husbands or to cheer their husbands up right now. They don't want to hang out with them. Like how we're saying, Autumn, want to do stuff together. They don't want to, and that makes me sad. But I know that's reality.
Yeah. See, that makes me sad, and I can't imagine that. That's the thing. For me, I just can't imagine it. And so that's why I want to have conversations like this, because it is reality, and it is a reason why we have officers, really depressed and really struggling, right? And I can just say that, like, from being an officer, the job will just pour salt in that wound, right? Because when you come home, you're just exhausted. The last thing you want to do is put anything into your friggin' marriage. I know that. I do know that. I know how hard that can be. But I also know how important a wife's role is. And I love Adam Davis. He was actually on our podcast a couple episodes ago, and so he's really great. And I love that you referenced him. And so, what is important, and I would just want every person listening to this, spouse, because if you're a spouse of anybody, male, female, doesn't matter. I just want you to hear me, and this goes to my officers as well, is we just have so much power and influence in our own relationships on our spouses. And I think that I think that we just take it all for granted. You really highlighted a really great point as, and it was really interesting. So my husband, he's accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time, very short career. He's been very successful. Like 4 times Trooper of the Troop, Trooper of the Year, Canine of the Year. And yes, I will brag about it because nobody understands what it's like to live with somebody who was gone 24/7. Okay. Because he's been out there killing it. I mean, you guys, you ladies know, but like, non-police spouses, like, they don't get it. And so, but what I can say is has taken a very strong wife to be able to build that up, right? Because when he comes home and he's in a mind fuck, I quickly have to get him out of that, because if I don't, he will not be successful. He will not be as successful as he wants to be. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I just think that's really, really important. I think it's a wonderful thing to highlight. And I really appreciate what you said. And I think that even if you're not in law enforcement, like what you were saying about like the wives and the relationships, like I can't imagine it. But I think that what everybody needs to understand listening, that you have so much power in all relationships and you have so much influence. And I think that what happens with people is they forget that how much significance they have in their lives, and they forget how significant they really are to other people. And that's when we start going downhill. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Ladies, what would you like to leave? I still call everybody Sheepdog Nation. It's not the name of my podcast, but what would you like to leave Sheepdog Nation with as wives? What could you give them for a little advice from your perspective?
What I would say is that in marriage, you're asking advice from us for wives, right? That's what you're asking. Okay.
Yeah.
I would say there's going to be a lot of bad days. There's going to be a lot of good days, and most are going to be in between that. Did it cut out?
You're good.
You're
Okay.
good.
So I would say just keep fighting for your marriage on the bad days, the good days, and the in-between days, because it is worth it. And that person is supposed to be with you forever, right? I know that's not always the case, but isn't the case for you. I would say seek out a counselor, or if you need medicine, ladies, I mean, I had babies and went freaking psycho. So there is no shame in my game of getting on anxiety meds, because I just was in my head thinking I would rather be a good mom and good wife and just a happier person, than not, and then be screaming and mad and frustrated all the time. And so if you need the help, go to counseling, get on meds, do the work to make your life, to make your marriage better, to,
Absolutely.
and show up for yourself.
I love that. Now, Becky, listen. Do you have a whole thing? Do you have a whole thing out in your head? Because I have a whole different question for you. But go ahead.
Well, mine's pretty short. I was just gonna say, and it sounds so cliche, but mine is really just for sheepdogs, whoever. It's just knowing your spouse, knowing what they need when they need it, and communicating. Communicating. I have a tendency to put thoughts in my husband's head. So if he tells me something, I need to take that at face value. Like, that is what he said, and that's how he feels right now, right? Not turn it into all these other things that I think in my head. right? I turn what he has said into something else.
Yep.
So being honest with each other, boundaries, communication, like all of those things are so important.
I love it. Now, can you tell us the engagement story in the gas station, please?
So my husband was married before. He, like I said, he's in the army, and they have a tendency to get married.
They get married. Yeah, we know that.
For me, it's true. So he got married from the time he was 21 to 23, and so I met him when he was 26 and I was 23. And he was like, "Meh, I'm never gonna get married." And I'm like, "What the hell am I doing with this guy? Like, that's not my end game. I want to get married." So we dated for like 2 years. And that's when I started getting really antsy. I was like, I am not going to be dating you for 8 years. And then we have some courthouse marriage because I'm too embarrassed to go. No, I want the whole nine. I want the big wedding. I want it all. And I'm not waiting forever. And he at one point he was like, Mary was in on all of this. I thought it was going to happen. He had this big surprise night for me. So I got dressed up, almost had my hair and makeup done. This is back in the day. I couldn't afford that. And he surprised me. He's like, "Hey," and we drove to another city. It was to go see Seinfeld. And so that was not my engagement night. So I was pissed. And this was like his glory days. Like he was so happy about this. Anyway, so we had been at my dad's house. My dad lives out of state. And so we'd been at his house. He'd asked for my hand in marriage to my dad. And while we were driving back, I asked him to pull over so I could get some magazines. This is before social media. And when I came out, he said he was on the other side of the car and he's like, "Oh my gosh, we've got a nail in the tire." And he said, looking back, he should have said, "There's a rock in the tire," because, like a rock. And I was like, "What? No, we're never going to get home." And so I went over to the other side of the car and he was down on one knee proposing.
Aww.
A guy pulls up maybe 60 seconds after to use the payphone because people are still using payphones then. So like oblivious to what's just happened.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. Love it.
I have no idea why there or what the deal was. We'd been at Biltmore House too. Like, I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but like would have been a pretty amazing North Carolina. Would have been a fairly amazing place to propose. But whatever. Gas stations, Biltmore House, same thing.
It's always reminded me. Did you watch The Office?
The Office.
The Office. No, I've never seen it.
Oh, you have? Stop.
No, I'm sorry. I'll have to watch it.
It's on Netflix. You need to go watch it. But Jim and Pam get engaged. It's always reminded me of that. They got engaged at a gas station. But
Mary has a big crush on Jim. That's like her number one. That's like her chief, right?
Really?
From The Office, like not John what's his last name? Krasinski.
It's Jim. Okay, I can relate to that.
John Krasinski, yeah.
So let me ask you this: have you ever seen Heart of Dixie?
No.
Girls, where have you been? It is on Netflix. It has 75 episodes of pure amazingness and is based out of Alabama, Mobile, Alabama. Well, it's actually based out of like Blue Bell, which doesn't exist. You need to watch it. I'm telling you, it's amazing. So I'll watch The Office if you guys will watch Heart of Dixie.
I'll start it and get back with you.
Yeah, so good. I loved it. Like when it ended, I cried. That's like how good. It's like so good. It's not a cop thing. It's a total chick flick. I loved it. Well, thank you, ladies, for coming on. It's so fun. I love you guys because you guys are so funny and so off the cuff. And like, there's gonna be for everybody listening. I'm gonna be attempting to edit the fuck out of this, and and so we're just gonna.
I'm so sorry.
We're just gonna see how that goes. But no, this is how I like it. I like it real and fucking raw. This is how it is. So
she got so many pearls of wisdom too tonight. She was dropping some bombs, like great stuff, and it would just cut out halfway through.
I'm so sorry. Well, I was gonna walk through my house into my room, but then I thought that would mess up sound. And I was like, "Oh crap, I'm just going to sit here and pray that it doesn't like go out on me, but it did, I guess.
I honestly think it just adds to the show. I think it's fucking hilarious, and it makes me. This is what's gonna make people want to head over to your podcast because I hope it's funny. Make episodes funny as this shit because you guys are hilarious. I love how you like even each other out.
We do. We can, yeah. And then I know exactly what Becky's gonna say, like when I call her after this, and be like, "How did you think it went?" We do that.
I know, and that's why the TV show would be so awesome because like I wish everybody could see how many times Becky's like pointing at Mary like go.
Okay. Do you want to know a really quick funny story?
Yes.
It'll probably like cut out on me again. Before our season 3 launched a few months ago, we got a random email from someone from Bravo or E.
Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this.
She said they were pitching a reality show for.
It fucking cuts out.
No.
It cuts out. What is going on?
Oh, it cut out again.
Okay.
You tell.
So she's pitching a reality show. She calls us. We're on a 3-way call because we're like, we got to evenly represent this, right? And she starts asking us all these questions, and slowly you feel her kind of like questions get more silent in between the answers, and you're like, all right, I feel like she's slowly losing interest here. And she's like, okay, well, we'll have to call you back, is basically how it ended. And if anyone's wondering if we've been called back or not, we have not.
What was the pitch for?
Well, it was for a reality show for women that follow their passion. And she was like, I love that y'all are law enforcement wives and you do a podcast about it and you're best friends. And she was so into us. And then she was like, now, do y'all record your podcast in the same room? And we were like, well, we don't live in the same city. And she's like, oh. And then that's when she was like, yeah, okay, well, we'll call you back if we're interested. But at first she was like,
she's so into it.
So be looking for some reality show in like the next year.
Maybe it would have been like maybe they were looking for like the next Tiger King.
They were. And listen,
that white trash at this point. I don't think.
You guys, I don't know. I think you guys totally have a shot of having your own reality show. You guys would be hilarious. Listen, Sheepdog Nation, this has been fun, ladies. It's been real. If you want to check out their podcast, it's in the show notes. Tell me what it is, Mary.
Blue Wife Life Podcast.
Go check them out. They're fun. Obviously, they're hilarious. Ladies, thank you very much, Sheepdog Nation. I'll see you next time.